Everyone, welcome to this session on retail management, MMPM 009. We will look into the block 1, which consists of 3 units. We will go through the first unit today. Retail industry is of one of the oldest part of the marketing scenario. Today, the landscape of retail has undergone a sea change. Earlier, it used to be very unstructured and traditionally driven by the mom and pop stores. But today, we are seeing major inroads in terms of organized efforts from established companies who are establishing their retail outlets to reach out to the people. So, in today's unit, we will look into what is the importance of retailing in the distribution scenario. Second, we will look into how the Indian retail industry has grown over a period of time? When did it start? How did it go? What are the current trends? Furthermore, we are looking to what kind of categories and what kind of skill we have among us, and what are the challenges that the retail industry is facing in current times. So let's start with the unit 1, where we will look into what is the basic concept of retailing. If you see, the concept of retailing starts with, it is something a sum total of all activities which involves in selling goods and services to the end user. The end user could be an individual like you and me, or a household. Most of the formats which we look into is to catering to this end user. The entire distribution channel, if you see earlier, it had a lot of intermediaries from manufacturers to the end users. There were many intermediaries who were there, and retailers were the last chain, members in that chain of distribution. So they hold a significant importance as far as capturing the market is concerned or getting the market shares. For every marketer, it is a dream to see that the last mile of connectivity with the consumers is goes error free according to what their targets are. They're able to make a very smooth transition in terms of customers buying from these outlets. So retailing is one of the most important part of the distribution strategy. Over a period of time, we have seen that we have evolved a great deal, starting from something like proprietary stores, like traditional formats like mom and pop stores, which we calling in India as Kirana stores, and they have dominated the Indian landscape wherever you go. There are millions and millions of outlets in the country where you get your groceries from. But the concept of retail talks in terms of making even from a pin to a car. That is the logic of retail. That means you need to have capacities to showcase a large assortment of products and giving the products at the right time and in right measure and at the right price to the end user whenever they require, which means you need to be there physically to be make it for making it available. But earlier it used to be like, okay, the traditional formats are mostly offline formats, but today with the passage of time, we are also seeing many click strategies which have come into play. We have seen people like the Amazons and the Flipkarts which are also playing the game, and they have started getting into the online strategy to operate in this market. In India, we're also seeing a cusp of where we are seeing a combination of brick and mortar strategies as well as click strategies. It's a combination of the sorts. So you'll find that from traditional to organized retail outlet, the landscape is ever changing and ever evolving. But to take a look at the Indian market scenario, we are predominantly dominated by the unorganized sector. Now, what is this unorganized sector? It deals with most of the traditional formats which I was just referring to a few minutes ago. These are the basically the mom and pop stores. These stores are very small in size. They keep inventories according to the markets to they serve. Like for example, your nearby residential Kirana store would stock in those products which is required by the people in that vicinity. If you go to the organized retail effort, which is of a recent phenomenon, you can say about 2 decades ago, the organized retail scenario started. It started with in South with Spencer get opening being opened by the Raja Group. Now it has become almost omnipresent across the length and the breadth of the country, and it is one of the significant contributor to the GDP. If you see the economy, it is the second largest contributor to the GDP, about 90%, 9 to 10% after agriculture. So, and there are tremendous opportunities which in the workforce involvement in terms of employment opportunities. So that's another catch for the government also to see that most of the people do get employment opportunities through these efforts. Now, let's look into the sneak peek into the Indian retail industry. Predominantly Indian retail industry, as I told you, the traditional, it is, if you look at the traditional formats, there are mostly the kirana stores, the mom and pop stores, and there are also government stores. You must have seen the various super bazaars, super stores which is floated by the Khadi Mandi or the Kendra Bhandars, which is floated by the government institution. Even Safal, processed foods and milk, you will find, and also the cottage industry, they have been able to get into the traditional formats in operating in India to cater to this market. But more or less, over if you see in the rural sector, we also have a very different type of retailing which happens. For example, you must have seen things like hearts, daily, the weekly hearts. You'll find the footfalls. When we talk about footfalls, we're looking at the number of consumers who are coming to those outlets is extremely high. Then you have the festivals in the rural area. So the rural hinterland has a very different kind of a challenge which it poses to the various marketers. So if one were to look into the strategic interventions at the rural market, one has to look into in terms of what the rural market is constitute of, and mostly you find it's mom and pop stores or which are operational there. And furthermore, you will find the very uniquenesses of that of a cultural intervention, because these people feel that it is a part of their family. Most mom and pop stores are started by the families, they are proprietary concerns, it is passed on for ages, and generally they have these people have a very good relationship with the community there. So there is a completely different ecosystem that operates that particular system. Going forward, if you look into the modern retail, as I told you that some 2 decades back, we saw a major shift in the terms of how the distribution should be properly coordinated. Earlier, it was very fragmented, unstructured. So mostly the companies used to have a distribution network which involved a lot of intermediaries and used to take care of the payments. But one of the critical things that they found out is that retailers play a very significant role, as I told you in my introductory part, that they are the ones who are the last mile interactive people with the end consumers. So they play a very critical role in pushing certain products, making certain products, or in terms of the shopping patterns, or enhancing the shopping experience of the consumers. So when it comes to that, the modern retail steps in as a very big relief for most of the consumers. Today, the dynamics, the demographic shift which has happened, that we are a young country with a very emerging young population, educated mass, living in the urban centers, even in the tier 2 and tier 3 centers. Their lifestyle has undergone a sea change. That has also, and if you see the technology adoption, if you see the internet adoption rates, is a massive thing. It's a very surprising thing. You will find that the internet usage in this country, in India, is extremely high. And in terms of the smartphone penetration has been, so that gives us a platform for integrating technology into retail. So when you talk about modern retail, they have to take the changing circumstances into the fold and provide a very good shopping experience in those outlets. So it calls for a very capital intensive investments in terms of larger space, larger warehouses, transportation. So they are now getting into all these activities and controlling them so that they can make the flow from the manufacturer to the consumption seamless. So if you've seen the modern retail, it has started picking up only in the last. If you look into the estimates given by most of the consulting firms like the BCG, Bain, you will find that still till now, 88% of our unorganized sector is ruling the roost in the retail sector. But the organized retail is about catching up slowly with 12%. It has increased in the last, you can say 2001 to 2021, 22 estimates. If you see, it has increased almost by 9%, and it is ever increasing. There is also a decrease in the mom and pop stores, the traditional formats. It has decreased, but it's not. But still, it's a force to which no marketer can do away with. We have to live with it. So the only way forward for companies is to have a blend of both unorganized and organized, and also today, as I told you, the e-retailing formats which are emerging. And today you need to have omni-channel options to cater to the market changes. Next, we move into what are the categories of products. Because I told you before that this is one of the most important link between the manufacturer coming down to the consumer level. The consumer experience at the retail counters calls for the success of the retail outlets. It involves many other things in terms of product assortment, what kind of products are available. It's no longer brand centric. Okay, brands are available, but we also have presence of private label brands which are there, which will concepts which will come to know later as we move on. But what they're looking into is that are they getting what they want at the right price at the right time? And can the retailer provide that in a very, very, I will use a very comfortable environment, catering to their requirements, and making a shopping experience an enjoyable thing. So there's something called retail therapy. Or shopping has always been explained as having therapeutic, attributes. Therapeutic means one should feel elated after doing shopping. So modern retail is catering to that by creating avenues of creating a very good ecosystem while they cater to the diverse needs of the consumers. As I told you, under one roof, they cater to giving everything that the consumer wants. They do not want the consumer to go empty handed. So, to encourage footfalls, you need to have a very good location where your retail stores can come up, and kind of products that you have, the kind of environment that you have. You should also have call to action promos, in-house promotion which needs to be done to encourage people to come and do it. So if you see which kind of product categories are appreciated in the retail sector, you will find that under the product categories, food and beverages is one of the most important thing, but it's still not reached its peak yet. It's still evolving. Apparels is one such thing. Consumer durables and electronics is it's ruling the roost right now as far as the retail adoption in the organized retail is concerned, because it has got a history of having departmental stores built into it, and it has become more synonymous. But we are seeing major changes which is happening across the landscape of India in the last 20 years. I think we have seen major companies, big companies, are looking at this as an opportunity and have joined the bandwagon, because you understand that such kind of an infrastructure that is required can only be filled by the large players, be it in terms of the rentals, the location, the space that you require, the logistics that is required, the warehousing that is required, the transportation that is required, calls for a huge investment from. So all the big players have also started joining the fray. And they have, you will find that players like Reliance, Future, which is again being now part of the Reliance Group, DMart is there, Aditya Birla Group is there, Shoppers Stop is there, Tatas are there. So all big players have joined the bandwagon, and each one is trying to have created SBUs, strategic business units, which looks only into the retailing sector. So these have developed as an individual business house within the structure of what they've been offering. So retail is an ever changing. It is in the growth stage, and you will find a lot of restructuring also happening, a lot of acquisitions taking place as we move on. If you look into our rural formats, companies like ITC have very well managed to cater. As I told you, the rural market holds a very, very different kind of a requirement as far as your the engagement with the customers are concerned. because the retail customers, one, they do not shop for agriculture products. They shop for those consumer goods which they perhaps were get into the in the tier one and tier two. So now they have started giving an opportunity. Companies have started understanding that as the urban markets are becoming saturated, the rural markets are posing a big opportunity. So companies are also trying means and ways to reach out to the rural consumer by opening outlets like e-Chopal, which is technology driven, giving the rural consumers almost the same kind of products, information, as well as if you see the e-Chopal, they wanted information on the crops that they are growing, at what rate they can sell it off. So they managed to loop in those kind of services, value-added services, to make these people come. There have been efforts by other players like Godrej, and which has been acquired today, and we also have the Haryali Kisan Bazaar, which has also played a very important role in making rural interventions in the market. You will find across the place everybody is looking at the rural market altogether in a different format. Now, if you look in what are the key drivers why we are looking at these things in the Indian retail scenario. Unlike your foreign, we'll talk about the international scenario, but Indian retail has a very peculiar kind of a scenario. We have a large population of youngsters. Lifestyle is under change. The aspirational levels are also changing. The a lot of women, people, women are getting into jobs today. So double income families are increasing. Paucity of time, credit flows, banks and financial institutions are easy to get. So that has given rise to what we call as a disposable income. So that has also created some kind of impact in terms of the shopping behavior of these people. They have become more experimental. They have tried to be more adventurous. They have tried to look at different kind of products. So right from staples, which are the basic necessities of a person, to luxury products, you find retail presence all across. They have categorized their retail outlets based on the what kind of a customer can they expect to come to their stores. And if you see the NCR region or the Mumbai region, it's dotted with most of the top of the line organized retail outlets. So you'll find that they give you the best of the services, the best of the environments, which is almost comparable to what you find in the US or the European markets, second to none. And today that landscape is becoming more challenging and more acceptable to the people at large. It's not only a phenomenon which is restricted to the tier one, but is also finding its acceptance adoption in tier 2 and tier 3. So most of these companies, these retail chains, are opening up in the tier 2 and tier 3. Last one decade, we have seen a major global retail footprint emerging across the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, looking into giving better services, better quality products to the end users. When COVID came in, I think there was a major disruption which happened in the marketplace. As a result, because technology was coming to the forefront, these retailers, modern retailers, they could immediately change their techniques and could cater to the customer's requirements by changing into a door-to-door service, using online platforms to reject to create more orders. You must have seen that. You might have experienced at your level also. So these are few drivers which are, as I've already told you, the entry of the big players into the marketplace are all key drivers in the Indian retail market. Indian retail market, if you see, another important thing is that of the geographical divide. If you see across the length and the breadth of the country, the emergence of these stores have been very strongly favored in the north. East is yet to catch up. South was already there. Traditionally, it was a very, if you see, the organized retail started, as I told you, in the south with Spencer's opening up in Chennai, and in Kolkata did have some kind of presence in the east, and Western was again as it is DMarts and all. You are seeing it that they have really made major changes in those markets. So the lifestyle, the demographic divide, the kind of aspiration levels, the spending power, easy access of technology, all the and easy access and also financial terms also these we have empowered people to enable the retail industry's revolution in this marketplace. If you look into the key aspect of many people who are getting employed, as I told you, if you remember in my starting, this is one of the most important contributor to the GDP, but also is one of the major generator of employment opportunities across the length and the breadth of the country, giving jobs to millions of people. The problem is with that getting trained people. So nowadays you'll find a lot of institutions like IGNOR, many other B schools, they have started giving capsule courses on retail management. Something which we are doing right now is basically to understand and develop the kind of manpower that is required to handle such things. Because if you see, retail is not just selling; it is much more than that. It is something to do with how you handle the entire merchandise, the planograms, the store in location, the store dynamics, the store maintenance, the store management, including all the facilities that is required to facilitate, as I was telling you, something called the shopping experience. And it has to be customer centric, because until unless you have a customer centric mindset, you will not be able to bring in those kind of things. And currently we are looking into a major push by the government to make these things available even in the hinterland of the country, so that as we move, the digital India campaign by the current government has also created more avenues for making things available. If you move to the online space in the retail sector, of course, COVID is not a very good example to share, but then COVID did disrupt the market and gave us a lease of life to many people, many Indians, to cope up with the problems which came up with COVID. The non-touch kind of delivery, which the Swiggies and the Zomatos, in the quick service delivery, which they could format themselves very fast, uh, talks about how the retail industry is being accepted in full. And if you see post COVID, the online retailers have also changed their methods in terms of reaching out to the big. Not that they were not there earlier, they were there. Today, you see most of the sales which is taking place has significantly jumped with the advent of the online retailers. It's almost like 30% or so, and it's still growing. And every day, you are seeing something or the other happening to entice consumers to purchase. And if you see why this has happened, why online retailers are being more acceptable in the marketplace, again, I would go back to the way our lifestyles are getting restructured, the kind of time constraint that we have. If you're staying in a place like Delhi, Bombay, or Bangalore, the travel time, people don't have the travel time, they don't have that luxury, right? So online retailers give you that liberty of getting those shopping done on the online space, and by the time you're reaching your home, everything is given sorted out. Nowadays you can have cooked meals delivered. Swiggy, Zomatos are there. You have Ubers which can take you, you don't even invest in a car, you can always go from there. So the entire landscape is getting rejigged. It's going through a rehaul or a restructuring of sorts to make consumer services more valued, and the experience has to be felt by the way you are calibrating the entire thing. So marketers today are on the edge. They just cannot just think of just making selling products or services. They have to ensure that the customer is happy, is getting at the lowest possible time, at the right time, and whenever they require, you are having an enjoyable experience. And that by itself brings in lot of challenges for from the provider side. So the marketers have to be uh, attuned to that. Let's look into the FDI, the foreign direct investment in the retail. If you look into that, as I told you, retail industry took its roots in last 20 years or so in India at least. It started in the Western world in 1980s, and it became they've been reigning the world. But today, as the global market is into a recession, as you can see, and with Trump 2 coming, we are seeing major changes taking place in the world over. And many companies are also finding it difficult to operate in certain markets, and the profit margins are shrinking, and consumer confidence is also going down. So these are some of the things which also are critical to make things work. But in India, thankfully, we have been able to, thanks to our population, our consumption pattern has seen an upheaval. We are obviously consuming more in numbers. We are the, as I am speaking to you, we are the fourth largest economy in the world today. We are tipping now Japan. We have something like close to the $5 trillion economy, as envisaged by our Prime Minister Prince Modi, and you will understand that it calls for a lot of effort. It's not just that just saying $5 trillion is going to happen, but that's something which is happening. And what does it indicate? It indicates a market which is ready for change. So from the provider side, are they able to meet those challenges? So if you see the retail sector in the single branded area, 100% foreign direct was allowed earlier. 2012, in the multi-branded sector, some of the foreign people, the players, they were asked to step in. They could take a. They were mostly into cash and carry kind of, which is mostly like wholesaling and retailing, and they we did see much movement, but in the multi-branded outlet there is still some hesitation. We have not seen major inroads. That's because of the framework which has been provided under the FDI guidelines of Government of India. Now with the 51, we have not seen a major upsurge as such, but they are present in India, and slowly they are trying to pose a threat. Obviously, as I told you, operations in this sector is not only talking about deep pockets, but also creating a infrastructure where your supply chains are aligned, your logistics are taken care of, your warehousing and transportation is taken care of. Until unless you have a very strong sourcing point for sourcing out your products, it's possible that you are unable to meet the challenges. It's a very tall order. So these are few challenges which are coming up in this sector. If you talk about Walmart's and the Carrefour, yes, they are big players in the marketplace. And if you see the Walmart the revenue model, it's one of the best outsourced model in terms of the in the world, where you can buy any when you buy something from the Walmart, you can expect something from Sri Lanka, a shirt from Sri Lanka, maybe spices from somewhere else. If you look in electronics, you can get it from somewhere. So you need to have a very robust vendor management system to cater to the changing diverse needs of the retailing industry. So to reach to that level is not everybody's forte. So, but then in India, we have seen big companies like Reliance and all, Tata's, they have all jumped in the bandwagon, as I was telling you before, and they are trying to make the retail, they are trying to leverage on the advances that the retail sector has seen, especially with the consumer sentiment mindset changing or towards adopting the modern retail. If you look into the changing mindset of people, the consumers are the key factor in this, because today, if I am operating in a place like, let's say, Delhi or Mumbai, I would be more interested in seeing to it that I do not go, in fact, I don't need to go out and still stay at my home and can get things done. So, if you are talking about such kind of lifestyle changes, we have to, our expectations from the providers also significantly change. And now, from a marketer perspective, it's very important that we must understand the lifestyles, the expectation of the customers, to what extent they are voicing their preferences and tastes in terms of adoption. Is it only they are looking at price? Are they not looking at price? Are they looking into quality? Are they looking into something else? Are they looking into ease of shopping? All these are buckets which a retailer has to look into very critically. Today, if you look into the another critical thing is that of the high cost of operation. As I told you, half the cost is that for any for any retailer. If you are opening up a retail store at a very specific place, let's say in the business districts of SA NCR, the real estate costs are very high. The operational costs are extremely high for a retail. So now you got to understand that creating that kind of a space, the what we're looking into from the front side is that it's a very sophisticated environment and all that, but maintaining that is a very critical thing. We have to have our rules, laws which are aligned to creating those kind of ecosystem. If you look into the international sector here, I'll give a sneak peek into the international scenario. Over there, the retail outlets are very differently managed. They have commercial business districts where the Targets and the Walmarts are there in the commercial district. Huge span space has been taken up outside the community where the community stays. It's close to the community, but it is outside that ambit. Unlike India, where you have traditional mom and pop stores, if you go to any street, you will find some 20, 30 odd in a small street outlets of mom and pop stores, kirana stores opening up. So what do you do? What's the importance? And if you see the kind of footfalls that these small outlets are, that's a challenge for the big players because you have to not only create a suitable environment, but you also have to encourage them to come and purchase. So the cost of maintaining that, giving the kind of a feel of a ultra modern and whatever the promises that the expectation of the customers is very high. So the operational cost has significantly increased as far as the retailing sector is concerned. On the other hand, you have got issues like getting clearances. If you even if you get a spot, like if you talk about Lower Parel and in Mumbai, or if you're talking about Greater Kailash in Delhi, right? Or we are talking about any top-notch places in your given ecosystem, you will find they will take a pie of their share in terms of processing the things. And today, government has come up with better ways of handling it. You find sometimes the land which they are having are not properly, they don't have proper land records. So again, some of them are being used mostly for residential purpose and are not converted into commercial spaces. So if they're buying those, they're getting into some kind of a legal issue. So those kind of issues, teething issues, are also there in India for the retailers. So that of course, even if you say that okay, that can be facilitated to some extent, it takes time. So it you would say it creates a hindrance in the processing. So many a times you may see that okay, people are ready to come in, companies are ready to come in a given market. There is a prospect, but because of these teething issues, they may take their own time to step in. So what's the best method? If you're going online, maybe available in the online thing today. If you talk about quick service, the dark stores which are coming up, they're trying to overcome this particular aspect of these overheads which they want to lessen their overheads. Obviously that adds to the profitability as well, but at the same time they are trying to streamline them in on the other areas, for example the delivery times, and creating proper infrastructure to cater to the last mile which they are promising to the customer. And if you see the consumption patterns in our country, we are seeing a major change. As I've already indicated, that the with the per capita income increasing, the discretionary income is increasing, the lifestyles have undergone a sea change. Across the various demographics, we find there is an upsurge. There is a varied way of expressing in terms of that. So, for companies to cater to those varied needs, they need research. They need to deep dive into understanding the taste and preference. It is not so easy. Just okay, you are giving just hygiene factors, staples, and your job is done. That is one aspect of the game, but that's not them. Today, the retail formats which marketers have to change according to the consumption pattern with respect to various category of products and services that the consumer is seeking for. So one has to understand the nuances of how a person behaves, how a person looks at it, how you can facilitate that decision making capability in terms of shopping behaviors, and it is a an effort which needs to be very well experimented before you jump into the bandwagon. because the consumer taste preferences is an evolving thing. And today, of course, with the advent of analytics, we can keep track of it. We can use predictive analytics to understand the behavioral aspects of this. AI is again proving to be a kind of a boon for the marketers to understand the trend and reject those strategies so as to make it more convenient to reach out to them. But there is also a human factor. Let's understand that. I'll give you take a very good example of pepper fry. Pepperfry was the online retailer for furnitures and things like that. They banked on something like the DIY, that is do it yourself kind of a concept. That Indian market has still finding struggling to get on with. Look at IKEA. IKEA has to open 2 stores, right? And they believe in this DIY. DIY as a concept sounds very, very fantastic, but when it comes to an Indian public adopting it, there is a certain kind of I'll tell you, even if in case of the Walmarts and the McDonald's, there was certain hesitation when they entered the tier one. I'm not talking about the tier one cities. I'm talking about tier two and the tier three cities. When they entered there, the first resistance that we are talking about a culture where the consumption is very different. You walk into a Walmart, McDonald's, where you have to look into the itinerary, place the order, pay the money first, right? Look into the information kiosk and get a coupon and stand there or wait for that thing to happen. But others, if it's traditionally, they are used to a system where somebody comes and asks them, okay, what do you want? And they get the food, they consume the food, and then they pay. So rejigging, changing that particular thing also has affects the mindset of the people. Can you really make them available? Yes, I'm not saying that they are not used to it right now. Over a period of time, you have to take them into that fold. I don't talk to you about the retail sector. Just imagine if McDonald's were to ever, just hypothetically speaking, if they were to open up something in the rural market, can they go ahead with this kind of a thing? I don't think so. So they have to understand the way the consumption is taking place with respect to the various products and services, which requires a lot of studies, research-based studies, experimental studies on behalf of the companies to cater to these particular. Otherwise, it becomes almost like, okay, fine, I have this assortment, you take it, you leave it, or whatever it is. It doesn't happen that way. Coming to the next most important thing, which I feel is an important area, is that of the labor or the manpower requirement. Today, the organized retail requires trained manpower. Okay, some of the trained manpowers are, you can reject them, you can find out people coming out who can look into the business development part of it, maybe from the various institutions. But what about the people who are at the delivery points, who are at the point of where you are creating your touch points? Touch points are those where you are informing people where the person is coming, because retail focuses on the end, the last mile transaction that takes place between the end user and the provider. Retailers need not manufacture, they are mostly resellers. Nowadays, retailers have also started manufacturing their own, which are called private label brands, and they are stocking their products. So they are pushing their products along with the manufacturing brands. So that's another ballgame altogether. But here, getting the right kind of trained professionals is one of the most important part, because what I have seen, or whatever I have experienced as a part of my research studies, is that the attrition rates in these circumstances is very, very high. And the labor laws and nowadays standard operation procedures which have been put into place, you don't get easily people who are ready to go work beyond. You have to put them into a shift. You have to give them very other labor incentives, and of course the government steps in, need to step in, creating very congenial labor law possible for these they do obey the labor thing, but then most of them are outsourced from third parties. So third party manpower, so you got to understand this, that when you are aligning yourself with, let's say, a Reliance Retail or a a Shoppers Stop, the kind of training that is required is very, very different. And I have told you that this is one of the most employment generating areas. So somewhere down the line, I would feel that the retailers or the marketers have to understand this, of creating an ecosystem or a talent pool which is tuned in to take on to that. Of course, when they do their onboarding, they do that, but then they need to develop them organically rather than depending on any third-party sources, which again leads to very as a part of the HR, you may not give so much of incentives. Or there are a lot of issues which are involved in that. I don't want to get into the details of that, but it makes a lot of difference because when you have people from your own group and taking from the third-party sources, it is a you look into the the airlines, the hotel industry, everywhere we find that they do to do that, right? But adhering to the labor laws, getting trained people, making them feel important is also part of the game because they are the part of the internal customer. So retention of the good talent is also very, very important in order to deliver services and goods to the end user. So that's I feel is another very, very important area. And one area which again is linked to this is from the provider side is understanding the mindset. Until unless you have a mindset to take on that change, of course, most of the businesses are now sensitive towards that. That if you do not change according to market, for example, the digitalization. If you see the technology intervention which is happening, if you do not use the importance of what analytics does, what the the companies can utilize technology to customize their services to the customer to the we talk in terms of hyper personalization. Again, we could be falling short of our expectations. So what calls for a very successful retail operation for any of the retailers? If you look into that construct, the retailers have to look into in terms of obviously the market trends, the consumers, the way they are moving, what kind of trends are happening, what kind of product categories are being adopted, where the adoptions are falling, whether adoptions are increasing, or whether it's a lacuna, what is their competitive space, what we call as a marketing environment. That needs to be obviously needs to be assessed. But more than that is creating, making suitable investments in terms of, let's say, the supply chains, looking into vendor management, looking into transportation, looking into after sales services. These are critical to ensure that your retail efforts, or retail, those into the retail industry, are able to come up to the expectations of the markets. So, and of course, you need to have a regulatory authority which could regulate the entire. The efforts are there to regulate the authority, the kind of mechanisms are there. But I feel there needs to be a proper audit, which also needs to be done time and again to see where there are bottlenecks and how these bottlenecks can be taken care of. Going forward, if you look into the Indian retail, if you see the government of India is very much buoyant in terms of promoting making India kind of efforts. We are seeing major startups, youngsters who are coming into the retail effort. They are doing it, of course, now it is very, very regionalized, very localized, and then once they get better adoption in their markets, and they start moving into other areas and start escalating that. So that's a good effort. Make in India, looking into the SME sector, who they can get into this retailing of opportunities, is one such which we are seeing major, return on investment from the point of view of the government, saying that okay, we are able to not only give startups a chance, making a business a chance, but also ensuring employment opportunities are also developed. And of course, contribution to the economy in terms of the GDP has been quite noteworthy. So if you're talking about today, you must be seeing how even something like a vada pav, it can be earlier when vada pavs are sold, it can be put into a modern retail format and can have a chain, right? Indian snacks, idli, dosa, they're all retail chains which have come, but they have grown mostly in the local sphere. Then now they are trying to look into escalating at a pan India level. And when you, of course, you go to that level, you have to not only look into the investment part, which I have been referring to in the past as part of the challenge, but also understanding the local market requirements as well. Until and the local market requirements are taken care of, people are taken care of, you cannot, reap the benefits. Players like DMart and all, they have shown us the way how by adopting D2C formats, right from the creation, getting the products to making it available to the end user in a seamless manner, right? And not by opening too many big stores, maybe, but you'll find that they've been able to cater to the market requirements pretty well. So going forward, if you see in the apparel sector also, lot many big players have come into play. Lot of vendors are getting advantage of giving the right kind of products to them, and there are small startups which are becoming vendors to these big players. So the entire ecosystem is benefiting from the kind of policies which have been generated as a part of Make in India. No? Yeah, and also you are integrating digital, as I told you, technology has come as a disruptor. So you're able to cater to more number of people as you are escalating and reaching out to more number of people, and you're making the shopping experience a kind of a thing which customers look forward. Let's look into the global scenario. Let's look at what, so you see the global scenario as I gave you a sneak peek earlier. Big players like Walmart, Carrefour, Target, they are all there. But there is also, it's also true that the global market is undergoing a sea change as of now, as I'm talking to you. With You must be seeing in the newspapers, or you must be reading in the newspapers that so and so company is moving out of one country and moving to the other country. And now with the tariff wars, which is becoming so critical, you will find that the global players are also affected, the global retailers are also affected, where they are significantly looking at the emerging markets. Now, where the emerging markets are mostly the emerging economies. And not only we are seeing major companies coming from Russia, the European markets, Japan, and even Southeast Asian countries. So, which are making their mark in the global space as we move on. So, gone are those days where you just say that, okay, I'm a Costco, I'm a Walmart, I can make things happen, but there are constraints. And as you also realize that the global market is moving into a kind of a recession. So market is getting stuck. So the obvious opportunities now lie in those countries in the emerging markets. So East Asian market, Southeast Asian market, the African markets, you will find there are a lot of movements out there. And most of these companies are moving into through the FDI regulation framework. They're moving in there. So one thing is when you're moving to another market, in the international market, if you look at the US, the Europe, the Australia, they are all well established in terms of their, the supply chains, in terms of their warehousing, in terms of transportation. That's a well ecosystem that has been created. The biggest block for these people when they're entering other markets, emerging markets, is that they have to start. As I told you before, that's one of the challenges also which I talked about. They're getting the right kind of the space, the location, the store location, and getting the kind of support from the local authorities to get your things done on time, and adhering to those policies. For example, today if you want to open a store, if a mall has to come in, you have to look into parking abilities. You have to look into physically able people being able to do that. Every sort of eventuality needs to be looked into from a threadbare point of view to make it happen. In the international market, these players have been able to do it. Now, the question is when they're coming here, can they really make it happen? So, a lot of issues are there for these global players to come. So, it is not just to open the investment and ask them to come in and they will just come up with open house. It may not happen that way. Yes, they have been into cash and carry, which are significantly mostly warehousing parameters or transportation. They've been able to come. But on a full blown kind of a thing, they would be, of course, they'll be regulated by the law of the land. In India, obviously, they are not allowed to come in big way to look into the retailing business in the multi-branded outlets. Of course, they can participate as a with collaboration with somebody, but as far as they cannot come on their own. So there are certain checks and balances which have been put into place. So given that, globally, you will find that more companies would be coming to India now that India's economy is touted to be the one of the fastest growing economies. You will find many companies are interested to come and set up their shop here, open up more retail counters. But end of the day, they have to reject, they have to uh, rethink in their strategy, because what strategies have worked in those markets may not work out here, including the assortment plans, including the way things are being adopted. Maybe at a tier one, they may not face much of a problem. They would be almost replicated at what is then at the global level. But when you're looking into the rural market space, which is one of the major part of the Indian landscape, because that's where the market is. If you see, it's a humongous thing. And today, if you want the organized retail to grow from the traditional unorganized retail to convert into this, of course, we are seeing a major shift happening. But that shift is slow towards organized retail. People are still hanging on to the traditional formats. So that is something that the investors who are there, they have to understand that until unless they try to recheck the market and play in both the fields, as well as include technology to augment the services, to evaluate the services, it could be a different ballgame altogether. Coming forward to what are the opportunities for most of people who are there, they would like to know what kind of opportunities are there. Yes, there are certain operational level opportunities, there are business level opportunities, there are store management opportunities which are there. If you look into the kind of the back end operations, vendor management, because most of the retailers, they do not manufacture, so they get it from very select suppliers. Their vendors, the vendors could be, as I told you, Walmart has one of the best benchmark outsourcing model, where they can source out from anywhere at the lowest possible price and also make it available at the lowest possible price. That's the promise that Walmart gives. That's a very tall order. Now, replicating that would be difficult, but then point is, yes, there are opportunities for looking into procurements. Where would you have the procurements? So people who are equipped in those areas of their skills can be engaged as into vendor management, and they can also get into something called transportation, warehousing, because you have to understand that if you're a big player like Amazon or a Walmart, you need to have your own infrastructure in terms of your transportation. You have to invest. That's why it is very, very capital invested area. So where would you have your warehouses? How would you supply to your markets? Looking into the consumption patterns in the marketplace, and looking into how many warehouses would be sufficient. All those kind of routine logistic requirements and transportation, along with the warehousing to manage your inventories, has to be. So that's one area which you can look into. Other one is the category management for, if you, as I told you, that retailing deals with from a pin to a whatever you want to bring it under one roof, right? So what is that you are going to offer as a retailer has to be decided by what kind of products you need to showcase. What if the product into your will be offered to the market, which means the person who is handling the various category of products and services, they have to understand what is the consumption patterns, at what level it is being consumed, what is the SKU level that needs to be done, how the stores need to be well equipped to handle any kind of fluctuations in the demand and supply. And you see today you're talking about a completely year-long engagement with the customers in terms of enticing them to increase your footfalls, to increasing them to creating some kind of interest in them to come and buy. So category management people do understand, have to maintain sufficient inventory levels and being able to tweak it according to the market requirements. Other ones are more customer centric and customer interfacing kind of a thing, where you are talking in terms of day-to-day functioning of the stores, the store managers, the store executives. That could be one area of possibilities, where you have to see what kind of products need to be put up. When would you like to trigger a kind of a sale in store promotions that needs to be done? How do you manage with the various brands or non-branded people products, so that you are giving equal weightage to all of them? Private label brands, as I told you, most of the retailers are now getting to private label brands. If they are sourcing out their own suppliers, They would like to brand it in their own way and try to sell it to the people. So how you do your ale management in terms of planograms that you want to work out, how you can cater to the brand visibility or the visibility of the store layout patterns vary according to the products and services that you give. Like for example, food and beverages would require a different kind of a store layout compared to, let's say, in electronics. So obviously the kind of, when we talk about the customer flow, the traffic flow. So there are a lot of people who could also be looking into store management, the store movement, the store maintenance parameters. Looking into visual merchandising, which is a very important, as I told you about store in store. So how you create every space has to be a kind of an opportunity for you to give a return. So you have to create a space where you can visually attract people. For example, you have a jewelry section from a particular company. They could have a shop in shop kind of a thing. And for a perfume company to have a shop in shop kind of a kiosk being installed there. So those kind of opportunities can come in. Apart from that, you have marketing, business development, where you say that, okay, which areas we need to put up, what are the more, looking into the demand and supply equations, which stores would be more likely to come up, and which tier 2 cities we need to go, tier 3 cities we need to go and create a footprint there. Of course, that would require a process of getting suppliers who would be people who are interested in it, evincing very much interest, who are aligned to your to the company's philosophies and have to be adhering to various other parameters which I've discussed to you, whether it's terms of land, location, in terms of rentals. All these are again part of it. Apart from that, the company also looks into intervention from technology experts. Like analytics has become a critical part of it. How you create your store analytics and ensure that you're able to maintain inventory levels, you're able to create those kind of promotions within the season, create call to action kind of engagement with the customers using the online space. And today, most of the retailers are adopting both offline and online, which is basically online kind of omni-channel kind of a presence. So, which is a very peculiarity in India because if you see Pepper Fry, though it was selling online, they had to put up digital studios at strategic, not every place, but at select places, so that an Indian consumer who looks into a furniture would look into a DIY to take it. That's fine, but if they would like to touch and feel and get the sense of it. So efforts like DIY often fails if you do not create a combination of both offline and online engagement with the customers. Right. So this is what I can summarize that retail industry is a revolution. It is evolving by the day. It is becoming more intense and it's becoming more, and the profit margins are shrinking. The customers' expectations are going above the roof. How do you monitor that? And how do you curate it? How you curate those products at the right, and looking into your pricing strategy, how you make it available, keeping everything same, looking at the quality expectation, the service expectations, how you are catering to that is going to be of tremendous importance going forward. But this scenario is going to, whether it is on the online format or the offline format, both are important in terms of their engagement with the customers and also for the reasons that I've told you, as contributing to the GDP, creating an ecosystem for employee generation for most of the people. With this, we would like to wind up today's session. Thank you.